Oh, such a clutch off-season pickup, Dave.
I was worried we'd bring back the same team.
I meant those blackout motorized shades.
Blinds.com made it crazy affordable to replace our old blinds.
Hard to install?
No, it's easy. I installed these and then got some for my mom. She talked to a design consultant for free and scheduled a professional measure and install.
Hall of Fame son.
They're the #1 online retailer of custom window coverings in the world.
Blinds.com is the GOAT.
Visit Blinds.com now for up to 50% off with minimum purchase plus a free professional measure. Rules and restrictions apply.
Hello everyone, I'm Chris Wynn and welcome to How Are the Podcast as you join us in the days after Sunderland's 2-1 win over Crystal Palace. And we thought it would be good to take stock of not only how great the lads are at the moment, but the fact that we're over halfway through the January transfer window. And what better way to do that by putting us on the spot with a good old Q&A. So we sent out the message to all of you lovely people out there and you responded brilliantly. So a big thank you to everyone who sent in questions. And we'll do our very best to get through them all because I have two gentlemen who will provide the answers, and one or two of those might even be correct. So first up, we have the soothing tones of Andrew Smithson. Hello, Andrew.
Hello, good morning, gents. I never agreed to giving the right answers, can I just point out, Chris? So don't try and hold me up to standards I can't match.
Yeah, that goes without saying. I've known you two for long enough that I know that... if you scattergun those answers enough, one or two might be close to the truth. But anyway, Andrew, we're in the kind of midst of, the days after 2-1 win against Crystal Palace. So what were your thoughts on that? Because I thought it was hard fought. Crystal Palace were, I thought, well organised. I thought they were going to come and maybe roll over with all the trouble going on there, but they certainly didn't. And we had to step it up in that second half.
We did. You're dead right. Palace were not the shambles a few of us were hoping. You think the way Friday had gone that the heads might have gone also, but no, Palace did make it hard work for us. Both of our goals, we kind of had to break through the lines with some nice bits of passing because they were pretty structured. But it was just surreal coming away afterwards. We're at a point now where we're winning Premier League games it just feels routine. We worked hard. We never looked in too much danger, but there was no amazing moments or standout talking points. It was just Sunderland doing their jobs really well. It was odd just walking away because I was chuffed with the win, but there was no feeling of relief that there wasn't any last minute drama or anything. We just did what we needed to do, and then it was full time, game over.
Yeah, I think I was grinning there because I'm sure that's how I started the pod talking to Kieran Brady. That I just said it's starting to feel routine. These sort of wins when we go behind against a good side and come out a win, and yeah, it just seems to happen more often than we thought it would at the start of the season. But to move on to complete the lineup today and to make it feel very much like a match preview. I'm very glad to say we have Jonny Hawley with us. Hello, Jonny.
Hi, hello, Chris. It's familiar faces in an unfamiliar setting for the pod today, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not normally us on the Q&A. We're normally getting ready for the game at the end of the week. But yeah, just to get your thoughts on the Palace game, because I mean, Andrew was saying it felt routine. But when if you look back at the game, I suppose we had to really graft for that one, didn't we?
Well, especially in the first half. I thought in the end, in the round, the game was routine, I think, in some ways for us because, by the end of the second half, I think we could have scored 3 or 4 or even 5 goals. And I don't think Palace could have had too many complaints. But we had to get through, particularly that opening 5 or 10 minutes where, Roofs makes a really good one-on-one save against Mateta, which Alderete then clears. There's also in the first half, there was that free header. I can't remember who the lad was who put it just wide of the near post, but there was one where, again, we were just slightly half asleep, it felt like, for a couple of those in the first half. But we rode our luck a little bit to get through it. But then I thought after that, we just, grew into the game, started to stamp our authority a bit. And thankfully, in the end, we're coming away just, saying, well, that was all right. No dramas. We've got the points. Happy days.
Yeah. But it is interesting, though, because Regis Labris does talk about moments. And like you've just said there was a couple of hairy moments in the last minutes of the first half where it could have all been very different going into the break, Johnny. I mean, Matete twice, left Ballard on his backside once, and then the second one, absolutely unbelievable player where he was 3 against 1, long ball forward. I mean, he didn't have to be offside because he came back onside, didn't he? And chested it down, turned and volleyed it in the net from about 20 yards.
Yeah, it's funny when you think back to some of the other games this season, particularly like Bournemouth at home. That was a game where we had basically 2 lapses of concentration and we were 2-0 down. This is a game where 2 lapses of concentration, but we're saved both times. So, it's those fine margins, isn't it? That playing exactly the same way on 2 different days, one of them you'll get punished and one of them you won't. And to go back to what Andrew said, we all said in the build-up, like, oh, Glasner and Gahey and this and that, like it's gonna tear them to bits and they're gonna turn up and not know what they're doing. But really, we could have been coming away from that game going, against a team with like soon to be no manager and no captain, and we've managed to go 2-0 down in the first 20 minutes. But now we didn't, so we're looking back on it, like you say, as a routine win, which it turned out to be. So yeah, maybe just a little bit of food for thought for the coaching staff, I'm sure, to take away. But thankfully, as fans, we don't really need to care about that too much. We won 2-1, so that's the story.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Andrew, just quickly before we move on, Johnny did raise a good point there because, and again, the manager consistently says this week after week in his press conferences, but it's those moments about being clinical, isn't it? Because Johnny mentioned, I think, the Bournemouth game there, but you could look at the Wolves game, you could look at the Brentford game, West Ham game, even going all the way back to the start of the season, that the opposition had moments, didn't take them, and we're able to capitalise on it.
And that's a great position to be in as a team. One of your podcasts, I think he was called Luke, the Crystal Palace fan, he mentioned, didn't he, that Palace will often create decent openings and then not put them away. And that one right at the start where Roops has managed to force him wide and save it just proves that. But I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing about us. I think it's excellent that in those moments that really matter, we show that clinicalness, that cool head. The equaliser could have gone very differently. Broby could have, instead of leaving it, could have tried to touch it and swivel, or Lefay could have easily skied it over the bar. But we've got players who trust in their ability and are confident and know when the moment is right. It's almost as if things slow down for them, and they make a really difficult piece of skill look easy. I mean, the winner, I don't quite know what Broby's tried to do there, because it's not you wouldn't try and dink it over the keeper from that position, and yet he's done it, and we've all gone away over the moon. And Siddiqui was over the moon as well, because he was literally laughing in Broby's face when he was getting his leg stretched for cramp. So Labris probably set us up to be like that. We're calm. We don't panic when we concede a few chances, and then when it matters most, we are ready and able to capitalise and get the job done.
Yeah. And I didn't actually see the interview with Brian Broby afterwards, but I did hear that he basically said he just basically poked it in the direction of the goal and hoped for the best, which I think most good strikers do, really. I mean, the secret is to get it on target. If you poke it in the general direction in a situation like that, then every chance it might go in. But anyway, just because I think this conversation will continue into the opening questions, but I just want to quickly touch on, because the kind of story of the beginning of the week is the fallout from AFCON, Johnny. I mean, we spent about 10 minutes bringing Andrew up to speed, because Andrew wasn't aware of everything that had gone on. But I mean, everything about it was just, I mean, like I said, I had to kind of pause recording for a couple of seconds because I was giggling about the Benny Hill scenes with the reserve keeper running around the side of the pitch away from people trying to nick his towel. But it was just nuts, wasn't it?
Just one of the most bizarre, well, I was going to say endings, but not even just the ending, like you said, like the the Benny Hill chase and the 4-man scraps for the towel at the back post during the game. The whole thing was just like absolutely comical in some ways, utterly bizarre in every way. But like, it reminds me of when players will start having the handbags in a bit of a scrap start and everyone gets around each other and the commentators are always like, oh, these are the scenes that nobody wants to see. But everyone really is thinking, these are the scenes everybody wants to see. Last night was that, but turned up to 11. Realistically, do we want teams, storming off the pitch if they don't get decisions in stoppage time? Probably not really, but my God, did it make for good viewing last night. And I've never been so happy that no Sunderland player was on the pitch at that moment, because imagine if Diarra and Talby had to try and make nice with each other and be best friends when they get back to the changing room at Sunderland after they've just been in basically an international incident in the final of AFCON. But yeah, just utterly crazy stuff. I mean, Brahim Diaz as well taking that penalty. Penny for his thoughts after that got saved, eh?
Yeah. Well, you reminded us there when an old Danny Baker video. I think it was The Fabulous World of Freak Football, when Norman Hunter and Francis Lee were going at it and fighting, and on the pitch. I think it was at the Old Main Road, and I think the commentator at the time said something like, "We don't want to see this in English football and all this." And Danny Baker just stepped in and went, "We absolutely do want to see things like this. This is proper football." on that Panenka, Johnny, because the conspiracy theory is that Sadio Mane had a word with the Moroccan coach and he agreed to Panenka it and miss it, and there wasn't much of a reaction. What do you reckon? Because I mean that's a massive moment in a player's career. He can basically win AFCON for his country. It's not. I mean, no player would surely agree to that, would they?
I can't see it myself. I understand where the conspiracy theory comes from, because it did all unfold a bit, strangely. And you do question his decision making. If that's a completely natural call to Panenka it, you think, that's maybe a level of confidence that I don't think many other people possess. But if you look at his face after he has missed, and even into extra time, like he's in tears on the bench, and just look at the 1,000-yard stare in his eyes when he picks up his golden boot for the top scorer of the tournament award after full time. Like, that is not the face of a man who either missed on purpose, or if he did, that's not the face of a man who was at peace with missing on purpose. Because, as you say, look, that was his moment to win the tournament. So I can't see it myself. The only time I ever remember seeing an intentional goal conceded was Leeds against, was it Aston Villa a few years ago in the Championship, where they literally just let they let a player from kickoff just waltz through the whole team and score. And there was one defender who still actually tried to win the ball back, I think. Yeah. But barring that, I've never seen it. And I think the AFCON final's slightly higher stakes than Leeds Villa in the Championship.
Yeah. Well, that's it. If Diaz wants to get out of it in terms of missing a penalty, he can easily just turn around and say, "I was told to miss it." It'll probably go down with the moon landings in terms of conspiracy theories in years to come. But anyway, look, let's get back to Sunderland, because we were talking about we're talking about how we played at the weekend and taking our moments that we got during that game. The first question is along those lines, Andrew, because and I think we mentioned it on a pod last week, but David Smith got in touch on the socials. David Smith and some numbers, and his question, he said, do you guys on the pod have any concerns about Sunderland's XG? In the recent report, which I think was on the BBC, he said that it showed we significantly were outperforming the metric, and he says, what do you think the reasons are for it, and how do we increase it in the long term?
I don't know if we do need to increase it necessarily. Certainly not in the short term. I appreciate the questions what we do further down the line, but at the moment we are getting the results we need to get. Johnny said it there against Palace towards the end. We possibly could well have scored a couple more. And if that Trey Hume one had gone in, I think the place would have went wild, because everybody loves Trey Hume, and there was a couple of nice flicks in the build-up. But it would only become an issue if we weren't keeping things tight at the back. We've spoken there about the AFCON, and I'm a bit gutted that I missed the final because it sounds hilarious. But the Palace game is the exact opposite. There was no mentalness from the Sunderland players. There was none of this carrying on and losing our heads. We were just calm and composed and did the job. There was a point towards the end where I think 4 or 5 minutes passed where just nothing happened. And it was by design. It was because Sunderland were just took the sting out of things. Palace, you would have expected them to throw the kitchen sink at us. But we were just winning easy throw-ins. We were just slowing things right down. There was a couple of times players were looking like they might have needed treatment and all of this. So I don't think the other side of the game and the attacking and creating chances particularly needs to improve just yet, because the negative to becoming more free-flowing and creating more chances is that you lose some of that solidity and control of the game. I'm not bothered about watching basketball-type matches where it's end-to-end. If it's getting us results, I'm happy to stick with how things are going. And because of those issues I said earlier, with the quality that we've got, when we do create a chance, we're often making it count. Had Sunderland not scored when they did, we might have had to have opened up and been a bit more advantageous, but we equalised right at the time we needed to. And then I think we scored was there about 20 minutes left? So there was no need to start going through the gears and threatening. So in a few years' time, we all want Sunderland to be winning 3 and 4-0, but for the time being, the team aren't set up like that, and we're doing what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, on a similar theme, Jonny, we got a question in from Rye XCL, and he says, "Hi lads, Ryan here. Question is, currently we are in good form, but what would you say we're missing for that final click? And what is your thoughts going into the second half of the season compared to the first half?" Now, just to touch on what Andrew said, because again, we've been talking about taking our moments and games being in the balance and us being clinical. And of course, the first question was about that XG report, which says we're outperforming that sort of data. But when you look at data in terms of you can't be halfway up the table or in the top half of the table with almost 40 points after half of the season gone by pure luck, and you also not in a position where only Manchester City and Arsenal have conceded fewer goals after half of the season by pure luck either. So, and as Andrew said, it is interesting that there's a lot of talk about that final ball, about what we're doing in the final third, when the results have been so good and our defence is one of the best in the Premier League, except the top two who were running away with it.
Well, yeah, and it's no coincidence, is it, that the defense is so good, in part because a lot of the rest of the team is also set up to supplement the defensive side of the game, and that's not a criticism either. Like you've just read out some of the stats about where we are in terms of ranking against the rest of the Premier League in our defensive output, or stopping other people's attacking output, I suppose might be a slightly more accurate turn of phrase. But that, like you say, that comes by design. It's part of the overall ethos of the team is around out of possession play, making sure that the formations, such as formations even exist in the ultra fluid sort of modern day game, but ensuring that all of those are working in tandem, where you've got the players like Trey Hume who can flip between defence and midfield. You've got players like Granit Xhaka and Siddiqui in the midfield who are able to give you so much even without the ball. That makes you so much more of a threat to oppositions, because if you're difficult to break down, you're only ever one goal away from winning a game. And I think that's a much more threatening position to be in for a team like us than if you look at every game and you go, oh, well, we might score 3 here, but also you might ship 4 or 5. Think about Fulham against Man City in that 5-4 real ding-dong game and whatever. But at the end of the day, like, you've scored 4 goals against Man City and you've still come out with nothing. I think that says a lot about how bad the defence must have been in that game. And look, I know Man City are obviously brilliant going forward, but still, like, there's a reason I think that the majority of managers in the Premier League this season, certainly this season, if not the last few, have prioritised defence over trying to be swashbuckling going forward because, and this is a tangent into a wider point that is for another podcast probably, but the levels of quality in the Premier League are so much now because of all the money and the fact that even the worst teams in the league can go and just nick the best players from continental European sides who are in, the Europa League or even the Champions League in some cases. The level of quality overall in the league is so much that even the worst teams are good. So even the Wolves, right? I know they've obviously got a horrible points record this season, but even they've never been battered. They're losing by 1 goal here and there because they're just consistently a bit worse than everybody else. But even they, who people said could have broken Derby's record, they can shut a game down, over 2 minutes if they want to. They can just go, right, that's it, we're going into our shells, you're not scoring against us, or if you are, you're going to have to work friggin' hard for it. And so the gains you would get, I think, from trying to become more open and more fluid, I don't think they necessarily outweigh what you're losing in your structure and your solidity and your ability to be able to control games out of possession, because the gap between how good you can be in possession is very, very wide. It's the most difficult part of the game. The gap between how good you can be out of possession, like even the worst teams in the league, if you concede no goals, that's as good as you can be defensively compared to an Arsenal or Man City or whoever. So it's a long-winded way of getting back to me saying I think I like the way we're doing it. I think it makes sense. I think it's the correct sort of like risk-reward calculation that Labris has made, and the improvements will come, over time. It's something that we'll definitely be working on. In terms of one missing piece, I'm still looking at a right winger. As much as we all like Traoré and we've missed him while he's been at AFCON. Now, I'm not saying we get one right winger in and we're scoring 70 goals between now and the end of the season, but like it's linking the midfield to the front line, I think, which is something where we need those players who are able to be a little bit more versatile. So like a Traoré, he's great at carrying the ball, but he's not the quickest. He's not he's not the most direct in terms of actually running and getting shots off, say. We need to get some more players who are able to knit the play together a bit between the midfield and the front line, because part of our defensive structure is there tends to be a fairly big gap sometimes between those areas of the pitch. It's a difficult balance to strike, because no matter what you do, if you're trying to add attacking flair to your team, by nature, that's going to have to involve some sacrifice somewhere else on the pitch defensively, whether that's number of bodies, whether that's, the sort of the positions they're able to take up and the passing lanes they can block off. You can, as much detail as you want to go into, it's always a balancing act, trying to add a bit over here and without losing too much over there. So we'll get it right. We'll get it right eventually, in terms of making it a properly balanced team. But there's nothing wrong with being where we are. And as you have said, halfway through a season to be sat top half of the table and as many good records as we've got, that's no mistake. That's careful design by Labris.
And just on that structure that Jonny was talking about, Andrew, we had another question along those lines from Joe Braun. He said, do we have any idea what position these players are in? Alderete was out on the wing whipping in crosses, and I think there he's very specifically talking about the outside of the foot, which could have ended up being goal of the season if someone had gotten on to the end of that. But he says, Alderete was out on the wing whipping in crosses. Hume just goes wherever he's needed. Seems like everyone has freedom to go everywhere. And it is, we talked about Kieran Brady, and it is interesting that he said it's not a novel thing that teams do this, but I just don't think we've seen it very much from a Sunderland team.
No, it's something we don't see very much, and we certainly don't see it to this level, because it's all very well players being off the cuff and just vibing it and going wherever they feel. If you then lose the ball and you're out of position, you're normally in trouble. But Mukiele, for example, there was a couple of times he ended up in our kind of left wing attacking part of the pitch, and that's great. But the reason you're fine with that is because you know for a fact that Hume will just tuck in and cover him. There's so much intelligence in the team, so they can do things off the cuff and they can be flexible because they know other players will fill the voids and be disciplined. So it is hard to explain formations. It's almost like we're a five-a-side team where you'll do a bit in attack and then you'll suddenly find yourself defending on the edge of the box and all of this. But it works brilliantly. And yeah, that was fantastic cross by Alderete. I think Mukiele put the pass in for the equaliser. So it works. I don't think we do need to sign a right winger, Johnny. I think we just push Mukiele further up because he's obviously an attacking threat as well. And Hume is integral to all of this because he does. He was the comment there. He almost does what he wants, but he does. He's fantastic. There was times where Palace players were on the ball, and he just appears from nowhere and picks their pocket, and we've suddenly got possession, and we're on the attack again. Ballard, there's another one. There was a moment in the first half where Ballard picks up the ball and just thinks, right, I'll just run right through the middle of yous, and played a through ball for Brobby. He slightly overhit it, but again, it's fantastic. And these are all signs of players who aren't just Premier League quality. They're like top half Premier League quality. Because we've had defenders in the past who can defend. We've had strikers in the past who can score goals. But
Not
for
many.
all the... Well, all right. Yeah, even as I said that, I thought, who am I going to use as an example? But yet, for so many players to be so adept and able to have different strings to their bow, it's phenomenal to see. And good luck when your manager's trying to work us out. I don't know how you're set up for Sunderland at the moment.
Yeah, and we're almost half an hour through, and we're only third question in out of about 30. So we need to get cracking in the second half because we'll take a quick break now, and we'll be back very soon.
Every sip of Coca-Cola brings you closer to the excitement of the FIFA World Cup 26. Because nothing compares to the joy. So grab a Coke and drink in the FIFA World Cup 26. No purchase necessary. 18 plus in 50 U.S. states and D.C. with a web-enabled device. Ends March 1st with 8 entry periods. Rules at cokeurl.com/soccer rules.
I had that dream again. My small business needs to hire, but I don't use LinkedIn, and I hire an energy vampire. But also, they're a literal vampire. And suddenly, my team is spending all their time sharpening wooden stakes and buying bulk silver and rehearsing ancient chants, and then I wake up.
Don't let hiring nightmares ruin your dreams. LinkedIn Jobs' new AI assistant takes insights from over 1 billion professionals to create a short list of the best fits for you. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/quality. Start hiring today with LinkedIn.
And welcome back to How We're the Podcast. And we're going to try and do some snappy answers now, gents, because we're going to try and get through everyone's questions. But we can actually bunch a few of these together next one. So I'll go through a few of them, and I'll put this to you, Johnny, because we've got questions from SJT, who's Tenchi lad. He says, how does a fully fit Diarra get into this side? And if he does, at whose expense? He says, great problem to have. In essence, he is a new signing for the second half of the season. Alan Davis, something similar. He says, does Diarra come straight back into the team? I think he may have to be content with a place on the bench. And Elliot sent us a question saying, is it a question of patience for Diarra to come in? He says, Lafay's been exceptional, or do we move Lafay on the left, as none of our wingers have yet staked their claim? The best winger performance this season was Brentford at home with Lafay on the left, which I completely agree with. But it is an interesting one with Diarra coming back, because he was the big signing of the summer.
Yeah, and he was brilliant the first
other
few
than
weeks.
Xhaka.
Yeah.
In monetary terms, he was the big sign of the summer.
Yeah. Shock horror. We're going to give you a hot take. Granite Jack is a bit better than Diarra, in case you hadn't noticed. But no, in all seriousness, you're right. You know, Diarra, he was the record signing. Well, he ended up being the record signing. I know the record was, we'll need to do some timeline analysis to work out exactly who was who, but Diarra comes out as the most expensive, and he was brilliant the first few weeks of the season. You know, he almost scored our first goal of the season against West Ham. You know, he had a one-on-one saved, and everybody was talking about, the midfield three. It was, wow, how good is Xhaka, Diarra, Siddiqui? The amount of legs it gives you, the coverage over the pitch. We saw, some of the best midfield performances, I think, as a unit. I think we saw those in the early part of the season because they were a joy to watch together. And obviously he gets injured, and then I was going to say he comes back and then goes to AFCON. Depends how much you want to count that cameo on the right wing against Brighton. I'd be tempted to say that's not at all reflective of Diarra as a player, but he's fit now. He's been to AFCON. He's played some games, so he's definitely going to be in the manager's plans for the next, for the rest of the season, assuming he doesn't get injured. So I've got no doubt that he's going to feature, and I've got no doubt that he's going to start plenty of games between now and then. The difficult part is working out how to return him. Does he give him a phased return? Does he start getting some minutes off the bench and then state a claim for a start? It's always a tricky one with a central midfielder, I think, because it's a difficult position to be honest, the further back down the pitch you go, the more difficult it gets to phase somebody in off the bench, because it's difficult to make a standout impact as a sort of central midfield kind of number 8 in the modern naming conventions who comes off the bench. You're not generally going to be scoring or assisting too many goals. So how do you stake a claim? Obviously, training performances will be a big part as well, and fitness and form of the rest of the squad, because we might get a suspension and Diarra starts the next game and then bang, he's fantastic and he's in for the rest of the season. So there's an element of unpredictability to all of it, of course. But for me, for the immediate short term, I think it's still Lefebvre's shirt to lose. He's been phenomenal basically in every game except Brentford, possibly for the past couple of months. We know Lefebvre can play off the left, so it's a great option to have, and I've got no qualms if that's what Lebris decides to do and Diarra comes in the middle and Lefebvre plays off the left, because he's excellent. But for me, I think it's got to be a slower return. And don't forget, Diarra has played at AFCON, but he hasn't completed 90 minutes. He still hasn't played a full competitive game since before he got injured. So he'll play, and he'll play plenty, but I just think it's a little bit of time first, reintroduce him to things, and also he's got to earn the spot, because the lads who've played in his absence haven't done too bad, have they?
Yeah, that's it. And just on that, to try and keep Lefebvre in, we got a question from Ben Cluj on the socials. He says, is this formation, and I'll kind of describe this to you, Andrew, because he's got 3 at the back with Michele, Ballard, Alderete. He's got Hume and Ronaldo as kind of wing backs, Xhaka and Siddiqui in front of the back 3, Diarra and Lefebvre in front of them, and then Brian Brobby up front, because he asks, is that formation a way we can keep Lefebvre in the centre where he's been superb and get our best 11 on the park? He said that you've then got Talby and Mayenda as impact subs, because he says he would hate to see Lefebvre pushed back on the wing.
It's funny because I think Lefebvre is excellent on the wing, but I also can understand why people are concerned about him not being as central. That formation that's being laid out there is quite interesting to me, because I feel there were times almost when we were playing a 4-4-2 against Crystal Palace and Lefebvre was almost a second striker. That's how it looked to me. Now, that could be utter nonsense. Yeah, that's just how it felt.
But that's happened a few times though. Chris Rigg used to do the same sort of thing last season, didn't he? And end up basically as an auxiliary second striker.
Yeah, well, yeah. And you look at the position he takes up for his equaliser. that somebody who's in a more attacking role, mind, if he is playing as a striker, it didn't stop him getting back and defending. And towards the end, he's gone in. I think he's given away a corner with a really good bit of defending when we were under pressure. So wherever you put him, he's still going to contribute. But I don't think we need to worry about Lefebvre dropping out at the moment. I get the impression Lebris sees him as one of the first names on the team sheet. And rather than trying to find a position to put him in, I think it's maybe the other way round, and it's trying to find systems that get the best out of him.
Yeah, and Regis Lebris does seem to like that 4-4-2 out of possession to try and win it back. But Jonny, I mean, Andrew's already talked about it a little bit, but we've got some very specific questions. Jack Asprey sent us a question in, and also Paul Scott, both on Trey Hume. Jack Asprey said, do you think Trey Hume is becoming a Lefebvre 2.0, as both of them are trusted by Lebris to play a variety of different roles? And Paul Scott says, when Talby is back, do we see Hume and him rotate, or is Hume down fighting Michele from right back? Now, it is interesting because I think we had a lot of discussions early on in the season where we eventually thought that Michele might come in, make that position his own, and we just see Trey Hume play, well, maybe almost go the way of Dan Neil or something like that, where, he just didn't get the minutes on the pitch. But he now seems to be so integral, as Andrew said, to the way we play. If you just look at that goal, I mean, Martin called it out on the review podcast that when we talked to our equaliser, that it was down to the positioning of Trey Hume that allowed that triangle and Michele to go on the overlap. So he just seems to be so important with winning the ball back and us in an attacking sense.
100% agree. I think Trey Hume's undergoing a similar kind of journey or evolution as a player as Luke O'Nien did, as part of our climb through the leagues, where every sort of new phase it was, well, okay, this will be when O'Nien drops out the team, right? Because it was, he's not good enough to be a midfielder. And then he plays fullback and it's, well, he's not a fullback really, is he? And then he becomes a centre-back and it's, well, he's not a centre-back really, is he? And then we go up and it's, well, he's not a championship centre-back, is he? And then we go up again, and you know what I mean? But the one constant through all of that is whatever you say, O'Nien was in the team. And Hume seems to be a bit similar, where it's, well, okay, so Hume will have the right back spot, but only because he already was. He'll get, displaced eventually. And then it's, well, now he's playing left back. But that's only because, Masuaku's not up to it and Ronaldo's, whatever. And now he's playing in midfield, but that's only because, Siddiqui and Diarra are away at AFCON, and then he's on the right wing, and it's, that's only... And the one constant through all of it is Trey Hume still stays on the pitch, and he's still part of the team. So the first part of the question, is he becoming a sort of Lefebvre 2.0? I think that's a brilliant comparison. I think that's absolutely spot on. Like, Lebris clearly, and I've said this a few times, I say it regularly to, when I go to the match and stuff as well, Hume is clearly tactically like levels above some of the other players, and they're very, very good players as well. So I think that says a lot about, the way that Hume's able to take on the instructions from Lebris and play these different, very unique roles as well. He's not playing your sort of standard old, he's a right back who steps on, or he's a whatever who just drops into midfield. It's, he's covering 3, 4, 5 positions in a single game, and he's able to obviously kind of mentally cycle through each role in his head and know what he's supposed to do and where he's supposed to be. And, those are not easy things to do in the heat of a Premier League game where, the pressure's on and the opposition are going to punish any mistakes. So, yeah, he's proven through the way that he's played through the whole season that's a massive part of his game. And that's something I think that not just Lebris, but I think any manager really, really appreciates. And it's probably why he's so trusted for Northern Ireland as well. Similar things going on there. So, yeah, I think it all adds up to Hume being not undroppable, because nobody apart from Xhaka is, and Roofs, but I think he's as close to undroppable as you can get in a Lebris team, other than being an exceptional world-class player. So I think it's going to continue. I think, like I say, the one constant is Trey Hume stays in the team, and I don't see why that would change. As to who he's competing with, is it Talby that he's rotating with? Is it McKaylee? Is it Ronaldo? Is it Sirkin? Is it Siddiqui? Like, it could be anybody. I mean, it's going to be, I think people still maybe haven't quite got the head round how horses for courses we are. Lebris does not care about, what does this mean for the long term? But he's looking at each game and going, how do I win this game? And if Trey Hume is part of his plan for how to win a game, he'll play. And if he's not, he won't. So I don't think it's as simple as saying who's he going to rotate with, because it could be anyone on any given day. And that's part of the beauty of our team. And like Andrew said before, why it's such a nightmare for opposition managers to try and work us out.
Yeah. And I would ask the question as well, who could play that Trey Hume role? Because we certainly don't play him as a orthodox fullback in this system. But moving on, we'll move on to the striker who scored the winning goal, Brian Brobby, because we got a question from Jack Asprey, Andrew, and he said Brobby has got better and better with each game so far this season. Do you think next season, with a pre-season behind him, he could go up another level? Now, I think I mentioned as well the other day, comments from Martin Yule when we signed him, saying that basically we got a player here and it's the best time to sign a player when they're almost out of form, because you're getting them for half the price as he would be if he was in form. But it does seem to be that sort of player where given him a run of games, he just looks stronger and stronger every game.
He does, and he's still pretty young as well. So there's a lot of learning and a lot of development still to come from him. I was really pleased when it was confirmed that precaution when he got taken off at Everton was just that, and it was purely a precaution rather than a sign of something longer term, because we don't have a player in the squad who can do the same job as Brobby. And yeah, with every passing week, it's looking as if more and more like we've got a bargain. I mean, what was it? 20 million we paid for him? And presumably that was because he had a difficult season last year, and he had a lot of personal issues going on in the background. So perhaps the fact that he's in a new environment and settled down and feels more comfortable in himself as a human being, that's going to contribute. But yes, next season I can't wait to see how good he is, because at the moment he's already in like beast mode, and he's fantastic. Here's an interesting question though. Well, I think it's interesting. Is he getting nothing off the referees, or is he being quite sneaky? And because my brother-in-law is adamant that whenever I'm shouting for a foul on Brobby, he's saying, but look at him, he's got his arms around the defender as well. And I can't actually work out now which is the right way round.
Yeah. I thought that. I have to admit, I'm in that camp where, and I think it's brilliant. I don't want him to stop doing it, because he pulls defenders all over the place. But I think defenders are given as good as they're getting from Brobby. And I think if you look at every single challenge that we're shouting for a free kick, and don't get us wrong, I'm there as well shouting for, I want someone to get a free kick for it. But if you look back, whenever you see a replay of it, Brobby's got almost two hands on the defender's shirt. And I think from a referee's point of view, he doesn't help himself, because a referee can't then give him the free kick when he's got hold of the defender's shirt. And I think Kieran Brady raised the point where he said, if you look at it half the time, he doesn't need to hold the defender's shirt, because he's strong enough where he can hold them off. All he needs to do is know where the defenders is and roll them. And he said he can do that because he's got the strength. So I think if he can stop getting hold of the player's shirt and giving the referee an out to not give the free kick, I think he'll get a lot more of them.
Just to slightly in Brobby's defence, because I agree with a lot of what you were saying, but I think what you've just said, Chris, is true when he's either trying to roll somebody or in any sort of way he's trying to just move with the ball. I think where the referees are shafting him is when he's got pure back to goal and he's trying to receive the ball and lay it off, or he's competing for a header. I think some of those, you've seen defenders with two arms round him, and it doesn't get given because he's just massive. But I do agree he doesn't help himself by committing fouls himself when he's spinning people, because then it sort of poisons the well, doesn't it? Puts it in the referee's mind that, oh, he's giving it back, so I cannot give the fouls.
Yeah, maybe the header one I'll give you, but when the ball's played into his feet, if you watch him all the time, his hands are round the back, holding the defender down. So,
I must admit, I did think that when he made that chance for himself against Man City where he spun Ruben Dias, people were laughing at Ruben Dias. I did think, like, there was a pretty big, thick Brian Brobby arm across his chest for a fair amount of that.
and if you watch the clip where he tears the defender's shirt off, he's actually running with the ball. Robbie's got the ball and he's ripping the defender's shirt off while he's running with it. So
The fact that you can say the clip where he rips the defender's shirt off possibly illustrates the problem.
But I do think that because the thing is, there are cases in there where Brobby should get a nailed on free kick. But the thing is, with all of the other cases that the referee almost assumes Brobby's not up to no good. And I just think when he gets into the referee's head like that and the referee's thinking one way, he's then got to do, like, he was completely wiped out in the first half when he was running with the ball on the halfway line. And I think he has to do something like that to get a free kick.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's just human instinct, isn't it, from a referee? It's subconsciously, if you see him a few times battering defenders, you're not going to be that sympathetic when he gets one himself.
And otherwise, the referee's just going to say it's 6-2-3, so I'm going to let it go. And he's almost got no choice. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because I think once he gets used to the Premier League and where free kicks are given and where they're not, I think he loves the fight, which is the main thing, that he's up for it. But moving on very quickly, and I'll come to you, Andrew, with this one, because the question is from Lou and Lou_SAFC. The question is this the perfect opportunity to try and go on a cup run and play a strong side against Oxford due to the safety net we've built to the bottom three?
100%. There was a question earlier about how does this team improve and get even better, I believe. And the only thing that's missing perhaps is he only made 2 subs on the weekend. I think Lebris still is cautious about substitutes if he doesn't feel he's got the options on the bench. But because of AFCON now being over, you're going to have Diarra back on the scene, and we've spoken earlier about how do you get him in the team. There's going to be Talby back. I know Traore's injured at the moment, but I don't think it was a long-term thing. So we're now going to we're very close to being in a position where we're at full strength again. So there is no reason why we can't give the cup a proper go. Relegation is, in my mind, it's so far away from our concerns now. It's just not an issue. So yeah, we've got a really strong squad now, and it just means that we can take each game seriously. We don't need to bring a load of changes in for a cup game. But even if we did, the players we'd be bringing in would all be absolutely first-rate, international standard performers. So, yeah, for me, I was over the moon with the draw. It's not going to be easy, but there's a reasonable chance of us winning. And we're in a position now where we've only got a game a week. We've got plenty of bodies back in the building. I really, really want to see us push in the cup.
Let's move on to transfers, Jonny, because the first one, actually, I want to touch on, which is quite an interesting one. Again, Jack Asprey asked the question. He says, do we underrate the impact of Sunderland Till I Die on our global recognition? As Tarby mentioned, he watched it when he signed. I'm not sure what would exactly draw people into it. I haven't watched it, but what do you think about that one?
I don't know if we have underrated it. I think quite a lot's been made of it, since it came out. I think it was a big deal at the time and everybody recognised that. And I'm pretty sure didn't Kirill even mention something about having seen the Sunderland Till I Die documentary series when he, sort of when he was thinking about taking over a football club. I'm sure he mentioned it played like a little part in his just sort of turning his eyes towards Sunderland maybe.
Well, it's our fault what's happening at Wrexham, isn't it, as well?
Yeah. So sorry to the footballing world for bestowing that plague upon your houses, but yeah, I think it's accurately recognised by the Sunderland fan base as being the big deal that it was. So maybe not underrated, but I do think it is worth mentioning and sort of pointing out the fact that it still remains something which is, part of the kind of popular culture of football, the more entertainment side of where the game's gone and all the different documentaries and, content that, football clubs are just content machines now. And unfortunately, in some ways, we're no different. But thankfully for us, it has had a positive impact, despite how depressing most of it is when you watch it as a Sunderland fan. And this is just like another reminder, isn't it, that sort of, I was going to say cultural legacy, which sounds ridiculously pretentious when we're talking about a Netflix series about us getting relegated twice. But, it has had it's lasted in the memory and it's clearly stayed with a lot of people. Which I think in a lot of ways is a positive reflection on us as a club because it's our story that's being told. And as much as we might not have enjoyed living through most of that story, it is still it's a part of our club, it's a part of our history, and getting that shared around the world and getting more people to be able to buy into what Sunderland is as a club is obviously only a good thing. And yeah, it's another timely reminder that still endures. And even as bad as we were, we're still enticing 20-year-old Ivorian wingers to Sunderland who never would have given us a second thought. So, hopefully it continues, but you never know. Maybe when we win the Champions League in a couple of years, that documentary will be what's attracting people to Sunderland in 5 or 10 years.
The world moves fast. Your workday, even faster. Pitching products, drafting reports, analyzing data. Microsoft 365 Copilot is your AI assistant for work. Built into Word, Excel, PowerPoint, and other Microsoft 365 apps you use. Helping you quickly write, analyze, create, and summarize. So you can cut through clutter and clear a path to your best work. Learn more at Microsoft.com/M365 Copilot.
This episode is brought to you by Stouffer's. Here comes 3-time juggling champion Natalia Rogers. She's juggling law school, her TA job. Oh, narrowly catches the laundry. What's that fourth ball? Parents unexpectedly showed up at dinner time? Is that too much for Natalia? Not with Stouffer's Chicken Alfredo and its mouth-watering mix of Asiago, Romano, and Parmesan. When you're juggling 4 things at once and the clock strikes dinner, think Stouffer's.
It says something about the lad's personality that he could watch that documentary and think, I'll have a bit of that for myself. I mean, he must be he must be a bit of a glutton for punishment. Just on the wider subject there, as you're both talking about Sunderland's position in terms of football culture and how people see us, did either of you spot at the weekend the Monaco fans are getting a little bit unhappy with Juan Sartori? Because apparently he's always, I don't even know what position he has at Monaco. I thought it was his in-laws that ran that club. I could be wrong. But they're a bit unhappy that he's forever been seen knocking around in Sunderland shirts. And they want him to be spending more time and more attention on them. And I just thought, when you've got top clubs in France complaining that Sunderland are stealing some of their attention and some of the focus off them, it's not a bad little place to be in, is it?
Yeah, well, they clearly don't know how beautiful Seaburn Beach is, do they, compared to Monaco, and what you see usually on F1 weekend. But anyway, let's kind of move on because I'm going to throw you an easy one, Andrew, or a couple of easy ones, because I'm going to bunch them together. Chris Day, who's Chris Monkey Day on the socials, and Ryan Evans, who's Ryan Evans 29. The easy one from Chris Day, he says, do you have any idea who we are in for? Given Keith Downey has said we weren't in for Fatawu, as we have other targets in that position. And Ryan Evans says there are pictures going around that Ruben Vargas was at the game on Saturday, and he asks, just taking a game in, or is there more to it? He says, I know he is injured, but interesting time of the season to be at the Stadium of Light. So any thoughts on those two?
Yeah, it would be odd to just be taking a game in but there just so happened to be where one of your international teammates who's maybe had a word in your ear and said, "Hey, it's canny at Sunderland at the moment, lad. Get yourself across." Yeah. Do I have any idea who we're looking at? I don't have any idea about anything, and that's work, family, relationships, football. I don't know. I don't know where I am half the time. I don't know who we're looking at. I don't even know if that was Vargas, because I've seen a few people trying to go all Sherlock Holmes on the photographs and work out, is it actually him? Is it somebody else? I mean, unless the lad was sat there with his passport and birth certificate, I don't know how else you could not think it was Vargas, because it looked like him to me.
Yeah.
It's interesting though, isn't it? I think, as Johnny's mentioned earlier, if we are to sign somebody, all the whispers seem to be it's somebody who plays that type of role. The lad at Leicester, Vargas, there's been another couple of players. It all seems to be a very pacey attacking winger who can maybe cut in and use either foot. So that you have to assume that's what the club are after.
Yeah, well, that's it. And, well, clearly Vargas might have heard how good Crozier's chippy was and just made a trip to Sunderland just to get some decent chips. But yeah, so moving on, because actually there's a similar one from Terry Dougherty, Johnny, that's come in. But I think this question will lead us to a wider thing, I think, because he's asking, or basically saying, name a realistic signing and why from each of you. But I think this is the point, isn't it, Johnny, with Sunderland at the moment in God knows how many transfer windows now. And look at the Tarby signing. That actually we pick up these players, and actually you have to look them up, because the obvious ones, and I talked about Brennan Johnson the other day, that Gav mentioned that actually we might have been in for him. I might have been slightly disappointed if we'd gone for that sort of obvious signing where, and Brennan Johnson didn't look like a £35 million player on the pitch at the weekend either. But I'd prefer us to go out and pluck these players, because you look at the Michele's of the world, the Alderetes, and you wonder why they're not playing why Manchester United weren't looking at them. And I'd prefer us to go down that route.
Totally agree with that. If we sign a player who I've heard of now, I'm usually like, okay then. I don't get to have half the fun with Sunderland these days is we sign someone and then you get right, let's do a deep dive on this fella who I've never heard of before.
Unless it's Xhaka, of course.
Unless it's Xhaka. But he was going to be the next one that I come to, right? Because I think the question was, name a realistic signing. Who knows what a realistic signing is anymore? Granit Xhaka captains us. Does everyone, I feel like we've normalised it now because he's played for us every week. It's weird that Granit Xhaka plays for Sunderland and captains us and plays for us every week. We were in League One 4 years ago. We were in the Championship for 3 seasons after that. We hadn't been in the Premier League since 2017, and the 16th best footballer on the planet signed for us. We couldn't have signed the 16th best player in the Championship a couple of years before that, never mind the 16th best in the world. And now he's our captain, and he loves us, and he's chucking water bottles about the place because we got a penalty given against us in an FA Cup third round game. Realism means nothing. We could sign Lionel Messi tomorrow and I'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, I suppose. I guess that's just the kind of thing that we're doing now. So, yeah, between the fact that 99% of players we sign I've never heard of before in my life, and I'm a nerd who plays loads of Football Manager as well, so if even I've not heard of them, your average Sunderland fan, no chance. Between that and the fact that somehow Granit Xhaka signed for us, I haven't got a clue what a realistic signing is. Haaland's out of the picture. We can't afford him. We'll probably kind of get Harry Kane. But Ousmane Dembele is our owner's best mate, so who knows? It could be anyone. Just strap in and enjoy the ride.
Yeah, who knows who's in Kirill's contacts on his phone? Who we could ring up? Mbappe's joining, if he's in there. But we'll
Real Madrid, there's been loads of fallouts there, so you never know. Vinicius Jr. might rock up on the left wing next season.
To be honest, genuinely give me Brian Bobby any day of the week over Mbappe. I much prefer a striker like that. but ripping shirts off defenders, that's what you want. That's a proper striker. Never mind any of that nonsense. But Andrew, I'm going to group these two for you from John Harrison and let me see, who's Rob Ellison Davison. So John Harrison asks, would the senior players in the squad, the likes of Nordy and Xhaka, be disappointed and see it as a lack of ambition if we fail to add proven quality in this transfer window? He says, I personally don't, but interested to hear your thoughts. And I'm going to group it with Rob's question, who says, do you think we are going to sign the players in January to push us as high as possible this season, or see how we get on and pick up in the less hectic price hiking summer window? So a couple of interesting questions there, Andrew.
Yeah, definitely. Really interesting poses, those. I don't think Mukiele and Xhaka et al. Will be disappointed if we don't sign experience necessarily. I think all the players coming into Sunderland are aware of how we're trying to do things. You know, we're all told that when Sunderland are making moves for players, they're not just chucking a weekly wage at them and saying, do you fancy a bit of that? I think we're talking to them and saying this is what we're looking to do. So the players will be roughly aware of what we're trying to do. And they'll have the attitude of, well, if somebody comes in, let's see what they can do. I don't think they'll be making any judgment on players based on what their reputation or their background is. I do feel though that this is perhaps one of the best opportunities we'll get to push on and qualify for Europe. So yes, I appreciate the summer is usually a better time to buy players, but there's so many teams in the Premier League at the moment who are in an absolute mess. We need to see that if possible and make the most of it. I think we could rattle off maybe 10 or 11 teams who at the moment their fans are unhappy, or the manager is either about to go or has been sacked, or the manager doesn't like the players that are being brought in. They don't like the system they're being expected to work in. Sunderland are one of the few clubs where everybody seems to be on the same page, singing from the same hymn sheet and all of that. So yeah, I don't want us to sign for the sake of it, but if there's somebody available now and it works, I'd love to see us get it done, because what a time to be joining this club. Just everything is going right. The mood's high. And we've seen it before with Sunderland. We jumped ahead of a lot of clubs with Siddiqui, for example. There was a lot of people interested in him. I think if there's other players around now who are getting interest from other clubs, we might just think, let's get it done rather than wait until the summer.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out in January. I fully expect us to pick up a couple of young players this January and go for it in the summer, because we're in such a good place. But this club just keeps surprising us at the moment, so I'm really not sure how far I'm going to be from the truth of that one. But let's move on to a really contentious topic now, and I'm going to throw it to you, Jonny, but I'm definitely going to bring you in on this, Andrew, as well, because we've had a few questions on this one, or at least comments. Paul Rackstraw, Raki at SAFC has sent us something. LD has sent us something, LD and some numbers. Roca Rodeo, who is Sandanson, also sends us these comments. So we'll go through these. So Paul Rackstraw says, contentious, well, what can we do to stop people leaving early? Appreciate there will always be need for some, but not the amount yesterday, so that the Palace game. Should the club maybe try to negotiate better public transport options with Nexus, as that seems to be the regular reason or excuse? Steve Richard says, LD says, early leavers get a grip, # till the end. Roca Rodeo says, football is entertainment. 3 questions for you. When was the last time you walked out of the cinema before the final scene? Dog Soldiers, I think it was. But anyway, when was the last time you walked out of a show at the Empire before it finished? I hate pantomimes. I'd rather get out there after 2 minutes, but I'm a miserable git. And when was the last time you walked out of a bar before last orders? Never. Broke a rodeo. I'll put that one out there. But I'll throw this to you, Johnny. I mean, again, it's been a touchy subject. I think probably since the Stadium of Light opened, and you're going back, 25, 30 years. So I don't know. Is there an answer to this?
The biggest problem is that I don't think people who leave early are honest either with themselves or with people who ask why they're leaving. And unless you know the actual reasons why people are going, then you can't really fix them. Because now I'll preface this by saying there's obviously in any given game, there's going to be an amount of people who've got a justified reason to leave early. They might have a really, really important appointment they've really got to get to after the game, or, there's a family member who's not well at home, they need to get back. And, there's going to be cases like that. But also, those are the kind of things no club can legislate for that. Life happens, it gets in the way. I don't think everybody who leaves early every week's got a sick relative at home or something like that. I think a lot of them, it's either habit or it's... I don't know. I can't, I can't get inside these people's heads because the idea of leaving early, unless we're 4-0 down and getting battered, is so alien to me that I cannot imagine what's going through their mind. If you don't have to leave, like a game like that against Palace, there's one goal in it, we're winning. Yeah, okay, it's not been the most thrilling end-to-end game in the world, but anything can happen in any given moment in a football match. All it takes is a dodgy deflection, a silly set piece, a silly back pass like Granit Xhaka nearly got caught early on in the game. Hopefully that doesn't happen, but anything can happen and result in a goal. So when there's only one goal in it, how people want to be leaving early when we're playing this well and the connection between the fans and the players is as good as it's ever been in my lifetime. And the manager and the ownership and everything, like the feeling around the place is spectacular. I cannot understand why people would go early. This might be my ignorance of the public transport situation, but I don't believe leaving a couple of minutes early makes that much difference to the rest of your day. I just don't believe that can be true. So I don't know how much the club can do about it, short of locking all the turnstiles and the doors and stopping people going.
Yeah, I mean, I'm always at the thoughts that it's people. If they want to leave early, they can leave early. I've got absolutely no problem with it. I mean, again, personally, I don't really understand it. But Andrew, I mean, get your take on it because actually, Johnny mentioned there about the type of game. I mean, I didn't see anyone leaving, the later stages of that Coventry game in the playoff semi-final. So it's this kind of, oh well, I need to do something. Well, okay, but is it just purely the type of game? Is it I see league games so often, so I've seen most of it. I'll just go now.
I'm at a loss to explain it. A bit like yourselves, really. It's been a peculiar phenomenon, and as you say, it's been the case ever since the Stadium of Light opened, and I've never been able to put my finger on it.
Just quickly there, Andrew, because you raised that. I went to Roker Park, and I can't remember Roker Park emptying before the end of a game.
The last 5 minutes at Roker Park, the attendance probably increased because when they opened the gates, a load of kids ran in to catch a couple of minutes of free football. Like yourselves, I fully appreciate there'll be genuine circumstances. There'll be people with ill health who don't want to be in the crush at the end, and yeah, everybody is entitled to do what they want. That's the society we live in. That's great. I am also, though, allowed in that case to be confused by that behaviour because unless there's a genuine reason, I don't know why you would want to leave. There's a team grafting their socks off for us at the moment, achieving great things. I think we have the best home record of any promoted team in the Premier League so far, or we've gone the longest without losing since promotion at home. We're fighting back from losing positions. And I think we fought back from more games to win this season than we have since like the 1800s. We're talking that long. That's how good this team are doing. And you're supposed to, you're always told that Sunderland fans just want a team that works hard. Well, we've got that and more. And people do still leave. It does seem really peculiar. I mean, it also seems peculiar to me that afterwards there's a load of people waiting in their cars at the car park trying to get out. And it's like, well, the barriers don't lift until 30 minutes until after full time. So why are you not just stopping in the ground and having a drink in one of the bars or something? I will admit as well, I am an old man and I like to complain about other people. I also don't like people who, while we're on about it, hang around the gangways and block them off so that you can't get to and from the toilets at half time. There's so many things at the match that leave a scratch in my head. But I spend my weeks looking forward to being at the game. So why people then need to leave, it really does leave us perplexed.
Yeah, I feel us getting another shortlist for Room 101 here that we did before. But just quickly, I mean, just on the same subject, now I'll stick this to you, Jonny, and bring you in on Andrew. But I've been to, when I go to, I'll try and go to Twickenham if I can get tickets most years, whether it's Six Nations or Nationals or whatever. And the what they've got set up outside, they've got the Guinness tent, they've got, food stalls all around, but it's enclosed within, so you get your ticket to get into that area. And then you've got bars and everything, and as soon as you come out, thousands of people go for a drink, in the stadium, around the stadium, again with a Guinness tent, and you can still grab some food. Everything's still open. So you've got everyone filtering out slowly and going for a beer after the game, thinking, well, we'll have a couple here before we kind of head off, or before we, jump on a bus or jump on the metro or whatever it is. And you just wonder if, because there's no facilities, there's no kind of people to hang their hat and go, well, we can go here and it's a good laugh. And actually, like I said, at Twickenham, they put karaoke on in one of the bars and things like that. So you can have a bit of a laugh doing something like that over there, or you can just have a quiet beer over here and get a burger, or, whatever it is. Like, is that part of it, that there's no facilities that people can, stick around the ground and wait for an hour?
Yeah, no, I think that's a massive part of it, because it's the same if you go to the cricket as well. You go to the cricket and you can hang around, you can have some drinks. I mean, you can drink in your seats at the cricket, but that's different. Like, there's all them tents, like you say, the food things. There's places you can hang around in that, like, you're in the ground, but not actually inside, because it's the outside bit. Yeah. And I do think that must make a big difference, because you make the whole venue an attraction, not just the stuff on the pitch. And then obviously an effect of that is people have an excuse to stay at the venue and enjoy themselves. But again, at the risk of derailing this into a totally different podcast entirely, I think part of the reason is down to, decades and decades and decades of treating football fans like cattle and can't be trusted. And, these bloody hooligans, you can't let them have nice things, because if you give them an inch, they'll take a mile. So part of that is the culture around football in this country is get the fans shuttled into the ground as quickly as possible and segregated from each other, and then get them shuttled out as quickly as possible and segregated from each other as soon as the game finishes. Look at what happened to the Newcastle fans in Marseille this season in France, for another example of where, why would you want to be in that stadium for a single second longer than you needed to? No, that's an extreme case, but that attitude, I think, of, like, football fan experience is at the bottom of the priority list when all of these decisions are being made. It's safety, and it's, crowd control, and it's this and it's that. And I'm not saying that, like, fan experience should be more important than safety, but I think it's, it's one of many consequences of that attitude being so pervasive across British society for as long as it has. And, there's plenty of valid reasons why it might have been that way when you look at the way that fans used to behave decades and decades and decades ago. But, now in 2026, we have stadiums that have got all these world-class facilities and there's all this stuff. But at the end of the day, I think the prevailing mindset is, let's get this rabble out of the way as quickly as possible and let polite society resume. So, it's, unfortunately, that's not something that Sunderland AFC is going to be able to do much about as one club of many that forms part of the British football tapestry. But, it's not something that's ever been able to be encouraged that much. And so I think we're reaping the rewards.
Yeah. Do you think that's the case, Andrew? Where, that basically, because there's nowhere for anyone to go after the game, that basically everyone is trying to rush out as quickly as possible in pretty much the same direction, almost, because there's only kind of, a couple of main roads going around the stadium, and it is a struggle to get out. So if you haven't got, let's say, even if it's 15, 20,000, well, let's say even if it's 10,000 people, it will who hang around for a beer after the game or something, and that eases congestion a little bit, then you might go, oh, well, actually, it takes me 20 minutes. Or do you think these people will still just leave early?
Well, yeah, I take the points Johnny made there and about wider football culture and how fans are dealt with. But you don't see some of these issues at other clubs to that extent. So I'm not sure. Yes, if the club set up some sort of, I'll use the term fan park, but some sort of setup where people could have a couple of beers afterwards or a bite to eat, great. If there's revenue to be made, by all means, make it. Again, though, I don't know if that would fix these issues because, you've got the sheepfolds there. We've just opened this multi-million-pound brand new bridge to get you into the city centre in minutes. You can be in Sunderland Town Centre, 10 minutes after a game? And there's any number of venues there for whatever you want. There's restaurants, there's dive bars, there's real ale bars, there's bars where if you want a bit of life and people are enjoying themselves. So I think there's plenty of opportunities to hand. I can't get my head around it. You mentioned the playoff against Coventry. I'd still be heartbroken now if I'd gnashed off early. If I'd dropped a shoulder and missed that Ballard goal, I'd be kicking myself now. One of you two gents said, you're not even sure if some of the early leavers would be honest with you and say why they're leaving. I don't know if some even know why they do it. Is it because the mates got up and diddled off? Is it a bit of herd mentality, maybe? It's always confused me. And what really gets me is people who are at the game and who are really into it and really making noise. So it's not like they've had a free ticket off a mate and they've just turned up for a bit of a day out. Some of these people do appear to be genuine fans. So I really am confused by it, and I don't know what the club can do. I don't know if transport could be improved because, let's face it, there's always going to be a bit of congestion after an event where there's 40,000 odd people there. But at the same venue in the summer, when there's Take That performing and whenever it's performing, nobody will be leaving early then. So I think it's something peculiar to the football team rather than the stadium or the facilities or the location. But what that is, I've never been able to fully grasp.
Yeah, and in the later stages against Crystal Palace, anyone who left early, they would have missed Trey Hume's unbelievable touch when the final whistle went, which was absolutely ridiculous. But just on a slightly similar theme, Johnny, we had a question from Steve Richards who said, in my time supporting the lads, this team was obviously one of the best. At the match, all I heard from some were moans and criticism. Walking out, I heard this bloke question Regis' selection, and the socials criticising Mundle, who played well. Howe man, back then. The socials is the socials. That's one thing. People just trying to get on people's nerves. But there's maybe something in the other comments there, Johnny.
Yeah, I think there is, and I go back and forth on this one a bit sometimes because I get really annoyed when I hear people whinging and complaining at the match. But I also do get it because, one of the things that you hear most commonly if you go to, if you've got a season ticket, right, and you're hearing certain things, one of the things you're almost guaranteed to hear is at some point, Roofs will play that ball to Xhaka where he then knocks it round the corner to one of the centre-backs and someone will be going, just get rid of it, man. Why are you fanning around at the back? Just get rid of it. What we doing?
We're definitely turning this into Room 101 now.
Yeah, yeah. But and it does me head in because I'm like, but it's just worked. Like, we've just played out and we've still got the ball. if we'd launched it up, we'd be defending right now and you'd be complaining that we hadn't kept it. But on the flip side, I can at least understand that one, unlike the early leaver stuff, where it's that reaction that's sort of, burned into you as a lifelong Sunderland fan, where you're so used to watching us cock things up and, anytime we take a risk, it doesn't come off and we get punished. So, and the rise has been so quick, and the rise in quality in the squad especially has been astronomically quick. So it's been a long, long time since anyone's watched us have players capable of playing the football that we're playing now. So I do get like that instinctive, just like, oh, I don't like that, because you're so used to seeing it go wrong. But it does get to a point where you're like, all right, it's January now, lads. Like, have you not worked out these are all actually quite good at the old football by now? Roofs knows how to pass a ball, and I think Granit Xhaka is quite aware of when to play with it and when to, to boot it long. Like, you've got to trust them at some point. But yeah, it does annoy you a bit, because you're like, come on, you don't need to be shouting out negativity. Let's get behind them. But as I say, some of them, it's almost like self-preservation, I think, more than anything else.
Yeah, well, look, just tying in with some of that, Andrew, because we'll end on this because I'll group these together, because Michael Bowers asks, how good do you reckon Sunderland can do the rest of this season now AFCON period is over? Michael Conroy says, are we 7 points away from safety or halfway to Europe? And Tommy Turns via email says, we've had a dip in form over AFCON. How important are those missing players to the core of this team? And how important do you think the return of the AFCON players will be? But that kind of goes into a kind of, I think, a bigger question, which has come from that one that Johnny's just answered. That where is expectation now? We're over halfway through the season. We're 9th in the table. We're 3 points away from Champions League. None of us expected this at the start of the season. None of us even dreamt about any of this. But where does this leave our heads? I mean, is it kind of, because say we do drop off and finish 16th, 17th. I mean, are all of us going to be going, God, that's a disastrous season from where we were, or that's still a brilliant season? I mean, where are we as a fan base? What's our expectation now?
That's a really, really interesting question, because I think you could speak to somebody like one of us three and we would be over the moon at the moment. And yeah, you could speak to some other fans who like you say, are still not quite there yet and are getting frustrated. I fully agree with what Johnny was saying about sometimes it's more the historical Sunderland fan in your head making you panic when some of these things happen. And at the game, when you get involved, you do get a bit nervous or excited and maybe say things you don't necessarily think deep down. I mean, I need to learn. It's fine for Sunderland not to shoot at every opportunity, because there is part of me keeps wanting to say, go on, have a dig. But actually that winning goal came from Sunderland not forcing it and moving the ball around and then striking when the moment was there. My expectations for Sunderland are always high. I think we're starting to reach a point where we can achieve things, but it does take time for everyone to get on the same page. And there will people who are just more naturally pessimistic about things. The rest of the season, I see nothing but good things for Sunderland. I said earlier, I think the cup run is very possible. Relegation, I'm not even looking at the bottom three and working out how many points between us and them now, because I just don't think it's a factor. I am seeing it as how many points are we off Europe? Can we sustain a push? The players coming back gives me confidence that we can do that. Pretty much every performance we've seen so far this season gives me confidence we can do that. I don't think this is your classic team gets promoted, carries on a bit of momentum and does well in the Premier League. I think this is a team who are genuinely Premier League standard rather than being on the crest of a wave. So yeah, my expectations are sky high. There was a few questions there. Apologies, Chris. I think I've covered them all, but if I've forgotten anybody, I do apologise.
No, that pretty much answers it, because I was going to say, Johnny, that ninth position, we could well be in a European place as it stands with the way it might all play out. But how do you think it's going to go for? I mean, where's your head at for the rest of the season? Are you just going to, whatever happens, it's just been an enjoyable season, and whatever happens, happens, or have you now got? Is your expectation levels gone up?
Oh, they've definitely gone up. They have to have, just because, as Andrew said, you look at the way that we've played, the results that we've picked up. I do think it's pretty clear for anybody who actually, looks at us in any amount of detail as a team that this is the real deal. This is not, this isn't Blackpool in 2010-11 or whatever it was when they, were riding the crest of a wave for half a season, then got relegated. I don't think this is Sheffield United under Chris Wilder, missing out on Europe by the skin of the teeth one season and then getting relegated shortly after. I think this is a much more stable, progressive project. And I think we've got, almost all of the building blocks in place already that you need. So I'm not going to lie, I'll be disappointed if we end the season 14th, 15th sort of thing. I think that would represent something of a failure from this point here as we sit now talking about it. Obviously, still, when you then take a step back and look at the context of the whole season, of course we'd all still take it. Like it wouldn't be a failure overall. It would just be one of those where you go, yeah, but when you're 9th in January and you're 3 points off the Champions League, which is just ridiculous, then you do have to recalibrate your expectations a bit, even if you're just looking at, like, in the isolation of the second half of the season, from here, what should we do? I'll be honest, I will be a bit disappointed if we don't get Europe from here, because, it's not the strongest Premier League that there's ever been, and there's no reason why we shouldn't. Again, I keep saying it, we've gone from why us to why not us? Why not us? Because I don't see 8 teams better than us in this league. I see more than 8 teams who could beat us on any given day, but I don't see 8 teams who I think, yeah, fair enough, you're better than us.
Well, maybe you should get Peter Reid in as a consultant to find out what not to do to have to avoid a second half of the season collapse from a Champions League place. But anyway, we've rambled on far too long today, much longer than we expected to. So I just wanted to say thank you very much, Andrew. Always a pleasure, mate.
Yes, thank you, lads. I realised at one point I got very irritable, and I think I was complaining about where people stand in gangways at the match. But genuinely, I am loving games at the moment and catching up with you lot and answering questions. It's good fun.
Yeah, you love going to the match and having a good moan. I love that, Andrew. But thanks again, Johnny.
Thank you very much, mate. Thoroughly enjoyed that one. Apart from that, 20-minute long diatribe, we all went on about fellow fans. So tin hat on for the reaction, but I stand by every word.
Yes, well, the questions came in, so they needed answering. But thanks again, gents. And thanks again, everyone, for listening. And thanks again for everyone who sent in questions. Don't forget, we'll have loads more analysis on the Rugby Report website, and we'll have pods every day this week, as usual, to cover all angles about Sunderland AFC, which actually will include a bit more analysis on our new sign-in with a bit of luck and reaction to new appointments to the Sunderland board, perhaps. So look out for all of that. But from us, it's bye for now.